BHL has been doing the last 3 decades. So I will go through the presentation materials. So this is the contents what I am planning to present, the various trends in the power plant engineering what BHL has experienced in the last 30 years, and what we have done to do the efficiency improvement in the subcritical, supercritical and astrophotic cycles, and the emission control measures what we have adopted, particularly with particulate, SOx, NOx, etc., and what we are doing in the CFPC and FPC technologies, and what we are doing on clean coal technologies. So this will be the topics of presentation. So as all of you know that the thermal cogeneration power generation is going through a advancement towards more and more realization of cycle efficiency. That is the basic thing. In that process, we are trying to burn the fuel in a more efficient manner. That's the major philosophy being tried out in various methods of design and other things. So you know that India has got abundant coal reserves. It has more than 265 billion tons of coal. And world over coal-fired power generation is a major contributor, and India is no exception. Coal will continue to play a dominant role, both and lignite. They will play a dominant role in the Indian energy sector because oil and gas for us is still out of the reach mark, where we cannot definitely afford to use oil and gas. So as a result of which now we need to burn the coal in a more efficient and eco-friendly manner. So you can see the development in the country over a period of time, starting from 60 megawatt in 1965. Today we are come to 800 megawatt unit rating. So the various capacities that have been built in Indian power scenario is listed. So as you see the unit ratings, when it is increasing, the pressure is also increasing. But temperature basically in the boilers are hovering around 540 superheat and 540 degree heat. But when we went for supercritical technology, the higher size unit rating is normally characterized with higher pressure and higher temperature. So up to now, whatever we have been using the throttle pressure, starting with 130 atma cycle for 210 megawatts, then we moved to 150 atma cycle for 210 to 50 megawatt units to improve the Rankine cycle efficiency. Then when we went for 500 megawatt, we made a jump from 150 atma to 170 atma throttle pressure. But temperatures were basically hovering around 540 degrees centigrade because of metallurgical concentration at that time in 80s and 90s. Later on in 2000s, when we tried to go for higher unit ratings because of the huge capacity addition, it is not enough if we live with this lower unit size. So definitely the huge capacity addition cannot be met by smaller size unit ratings. You need to go for more efficient, eco-friendly technologies. That's how the supercritical technology came into the picture, where the pressure is more than 221 bar critical pressure. So today the throttle pressure of the turbine is 247 atma at turbine inlet, and according to the boiler inlet will be about 256 atma. And superheat reheat temperature, we have gone from 540 degrees superheat reheat to 568 superheat and 596 degrees. This is how we have journeyed towards the introduction of supercritical technologies. So now, when you summarize, now when we started, BHL started with Czechoslovakian collaboration. So the unit sizes that are doing were 30 megawatt, 60 megawatt, and 110 megawatt in 60s to 70s. Later on, in 70s, we went for a collaboration with the combustion engineering USA. Today now it is known as Alstom France. So where we introduced this 130 atma throttle pressure turbines. Then 80s with Tata introducing the first 500 megawatt plant in Trombay, we went for 170 atma throttle pressure. So the forced circulation or the controlled circulation boilers came into the picture at that time. And also the coal quality that were being specified in the 80s started deteriorating. We were using somewhere around 4,000 to 4,500 kilocalorie per kg coal in 60s and 70s. Later on in the 80s it started deteriorating to 3,000, 3,500, 2,800. So we need size the boiler and auxiliaries to cater for this low grade coals. In 90s, the extension of 210 megawatt units led to the development of 250 megawatt units. By changing the turbine modules, we are able to give 20% extra output from the same turbine. And the steel plants that were using the byproducts, they was coming from the VFG fired plants. These gases instead of letting out the atmosphere, where we can generate the steam from this blast furnace gas, which is also called the borax gas, which is an improvement of the blast furnace gas because of the process where a very high amount of CO, the lethal gas, are passed in. So this gas also can be worked in a more efficient and eco-friendly manner. So we gave the boilers for this diesel tractable, 130 megawatt plant in Bellary, burning this gas with the very high amount of CO. So this is one of the major breakthroughs in burning this lethal gas. Then the efficiency improvement was also being focused at that time, because if you see the power plants, we were designing the air liter outlet gas temperature at around 150 to 160 degrees centigrade in 60s and 70s. Today we are designing as low as 125 degrees centigrade, thereby improving the boiler efficiency. So in 2000 saw the introduction of supercritical steam generators in the country. So the first plant came up in Seapath with the introduction by NTPC. And then later on it started coming in a big way, Bar, Krishnapatnam, Vara, Yermara, Siddhapur, like that. Many plants started coming in a big way with the introduction of supercritical technology. 660 megawatt, 700 megawatt, and 800 megawatt started coming in a big way. And then the need for running the units more efficiently also came into the picture, because we were running the cycle efficiencies of the order 30 to 34%. So with the need for burning lesser and lesser amount of fuel, we started going for more IT-based tools called the performance analysis, diagnostic and optimization system. Thereby we burn less fuel and also consume less power from the auxiliaries, contributing to the lower heat rate for the boiler turbine side. And designs for firing washed coals, imported coals also started coming into picture in a big way because of the coal shortage. So now the technology options, if you see in the power field, you have basically these technologies. Pulverized coal combustion, the most mature technology which is available in the world today, and thousands of units are all over the world. So and this technology is well understood, and everybody is mainly using this technology for generation of power because of its availability, reliability and performance. Later on, the fluidized bed combustion and the circulating fluid combustion boilers came into the picture, where you can burn low grade fuels and also has got very high amount of fuel flexibility, and also the fuels can be burned in a more efficient, eco-friendly manner by capturing the sulfur in bed itself. This is how this FPCs came into the picture, and with the abundant availability of gas in the country, combined cycle power plants came in a very big way, like Dadri combined cycle power plant. So Kavas, Gandhar, all these plants, combination of this air cycle, breaker cycle with steam cycle came into picture in a big way. So and now IGCC is also being thought as one of the options. At that time itself we started putting that demonstration plant of 6.2 megawatt capacity, whereby you gasify the coal and use this coal for coal gas to drive the turbine in the IGCC plant. So this is as told that PCC is the most mature technology, and the PC fired boilers, we have basically two configurations in the utility segment: a single pass tower type design and a conventional two pass design. So basically conventional two pass design is what is adopted. More units are in the world. Americans use this technology, Indians are also using this technology, Japanese are also using this technology. And the single pass tower type design basically is practiced in Europe. So both technologies exist and both are in operation worldwide. So you can see the contribution of BHEL in the power segment, where we are contributing more than 62% of the installed capacity in the country, and the unit sizes you can see that 7 starting from 30 megawatt up to 800 megawatt, we have come from 60s to 2000 megawatt. So you can see the industrial segment also, where steam generation varying from 30 tons per hour to 300 tons per hour. More than 450 units have been contracted and they are built. So after supplying this about 950 boilers, now we are entering into the supercritical era, where the eco-friendly, environment-friendly boilers have assumed importance, because in the 80s we were trying to concentrate more on the abatement of NOx and SOx by going for FGD plants and also the burner design to reduce the NOx levels. But towards catering to the CO2 reduction, naturally we have to go for still better and better cycle efficiencies. That's why the supercritical technologies came into the picture. You can see the efficiency improvement for the supercritical plants, what we are adopting today. You can see that about 2% there is an increase in cycle efficiency when we go from the base, that is the current 500 megawatt subcritical drum type plants to supercritical drumless plants. We are going efficiencies in the order of 1.64 to 1.96%. You can see the parameters what we are adopting, that is the characteristic with the steam flow, pressure and temperature. You can see that for a 500 megawatt plant where we have the 1625 tons of steam flow, for a 600 megawatt we have a 2000 tons of steam flow, and temperature you can see 540, 540. But currently all the 500 and 600 we have started improving the cycle efficiency, and improving the cycle efficiency is possible by going for higher reheat temperature. So you can see that we are going for 568 reheat temperature from the current 540 degree centigrade. So you can see one of the plants with the 540, 568 currently under operation in Simhadri stage 2 near Vizag, unit number 3 and 4, a conventional 2-pass boiler. And North Chennai 600 megawatt, which is under advanced stage of commissioning, where the temperature is superheat 540, 568. So we have started going towards improved cycle efficiency by going for higher reheat temperature in the subcritical segment itself. Now the units with 568 degree, these are all listed. So most of the plants which we are currently executing is with 568 degree centigrade reheat temperature. So we have moved from 540 to 568. Then this is for the 600 megawatt segment to take on the competition from Chinese. BHEL has introduced 600 megawatt class also. So you can see that here also we are going for 568 degree reheat temperature. So after supplying more than this subcritical drum type boilers, we have moved to advanced steam cycle with high pressure, high temperature. So this is under the license from Alstom. So all of you know that this supercritical technology definitely has got better advantages because of the lower fuel consumption, and the amount of pollutants that are produced is directly proportional to the fuel that is burned. So if you take a 5 into 800 megawatt with a 8 into 500 megawatt boiler, a 4000 megawatt to 4000 megawatt capacity, you will be able to save about 1 million tons per annum of CO2 for a calorific value of about 4000 kilocalorie per kg, operating at 80% plant load factor. So you can see the critical pressure. So this is the 221 bar. So we have been operating in this region so far. That is the subcritical region. Now we have gone to the 2.1 pressure, where water is directly flashing off into steam. So there is no need for a drum in these plants. Whereas here there is a definite phase transformation, water to steam. That water to steam is separated in the drum. So that is why we are employing the storage device drum in all the circulation boilers. You can also call the subcritical boilers or circulation boiler, employing either a natural circulation or a forced controlled circulation, where you are having a latent heat added in the water mass, where water is getting converted to water steam mixture, and that water steam mixture goes back to the drum, and then there water and steam is separated. Whereas in drumless boilers, or also called one screw supercritical boiler, the water is directly flashing off into steam and goes to superheaters. That's the basic difference. So the high pressure and high temperature as characterized by Rankine cycle efficiency, we will be going for higher cycle efficiencies, and the drum is eliminated in all these supercritical boilers. You can see the list of boilers that are being executed with BHEL. You can see that HPC bar, then JP Group Bara in near Allahabad, and Bellary 700 megawatts, and Krishnapatnam 800 near Nellore. Then Raichur Power Corporation, a joint venture of BHEL and KPCL, a 2 into 800 megawatt plant. Then this Bajaj Hindustan Group, Lalitpur Power Generation Corporation, a 660 megawatt. And similarly, Dairy Master Group putting up a 660 megawatt plant, and recently bulk tender NTPC 2 into 660 megawatt. So now we are gearing up, and we are already geared up to put up a 20,000 megawatt capacity to cater for the supercritical. And the 12th and 13th plant, that is 2012, 17 and 17 and 22, we will be going for more of supercritical, and virtually the drum boilers have been absent, and this will be taking off in a big way. So this will cater for improved fuel burning and reduced emissions, so that the boilers that are being put up in the country will go towards addressing the environmental considerations. So this shows the arrangement of the boiler what we are executing a conventional 2-phase boiler. You can see more amount of quantum of alloy steel and stainless steel being used in these plants. So that is the hallmark of this technology, because when you go for high pressure and high temperature, naturally you go for high strength materials which can withstand the high heat phenomena and others. So what we have been conventionally using carbon steel in these boilers, and some amount of alloy steel and some amount of stainless steel in the various superheater reheater sections. You have to necessarily go in for a very high quantum of stainless steel, a very high quantum of 9% chromium steel, as compared to 2.25% chromium steel and others. So this because of the high pressure, because from 170 you are jumping to 250 bar. From 540 degree you are jumping to 568, 586. Naturally, to withstand this high pressure, high temperature, you need to go for better quality materials. So this is 800 megawatt plant, same conventional 2-phase. This is being executed for Krishnapatnam, Andhra Pradesh Power Generation Corporation. Here you see Bellary 700 megawatt. So this is for the Bara plant near Allahabad. Then this is Raichur Power Corporation plant. So now the market we see for the supercritical segment is driven by 2 types of technologies. One is spiral wall technology, another one is a vertical wall technology. And vertical wall technology is being used by us in all our subcritical drum type coal-fired plants. So now this technology we are trying to use also in the supercritical segment. How it comes, we will see that. Now in these supercritical boilers, as I told you, it is also called one-screw boilers by the name, because there is no circulation in all these boilers. The circulation is resorted in these subcritical drum type boilers to protect the combustion chamber or the furnace of the boiler, where you are burning the fuel, mixing along with air and producing the hot flue gas. The high temperature environment that are prevailing in the furnace will make the water to produce more bubbles of steam. When more and more bubbles of steam is produced, we will encounter a phenomena called a departure from nucleate boiler. All these nucleus will join together. They will coalesce into a thin film of steam. You know that heat is transferred from the flue gas through the metal tube or the thickness of the tube into the incoming water. So when this film is going to stick to the water ball and the departure from nucleate boiling is occurring, it will not allow to transfer the heat from the flue gas to the incoming water. So it acts as a heat barrier or resistance. With the result that the tube temperature will go on increasing and tube will reach its oxidation limit at stage. So at no point of time we should not allow the tube to have a departure from nucleate boiling, and also the film boiling should not be allowed to occur. Tube dry out should not occur. That means I should protect the tube at all loads, starting from say 40% load to 100% load, at all operating conditions. For any range of fuel what customer gives, I should see that the tube operates at same operating metal temperature. So to address that, in all the drum boilers, I need to circulate the water by some more amount, so that I always ensure that the film boiling doesn't occur and only nuclear boiling occurs. So that way I protect the tube by over circulating some more amount of water. Suppose if you take a 500 megawatt, I draw 1600 tons of steam per hour from the boiler for the turbine flow. I will be circulating 2 times 1600, so that the heat is continuously evacuated and the tube temperature is kept below the oxidation limit. As I told you, carbon steel is used in all these boilers, and the oxidation limit of carbon steel is about 425 degrees centigrade. So, and the saturation temperature for a 170 atmosphere cycle is around 360 degrees centigrade. So, if I take a tube temperature about 50 degrees centigrade more, 410 degrees centigrade, 360 is the medium temperature. So, if I add 50 degrees, the tube will be operating at a temperature of 410 degrees. So, the oxidation limit is 425. So, it is safe. How it is kept safe? It is kept safe by circulating 2 times the amount of water. In a forced circulation boiler, by means of a pump. In a natural circulation boiler like 210 megawatt or a 250 megawatt boiler, I will circulate 6 times the amount of water compared to a forced circulation boiler where I go for a pump. So, I go for 2 times circulation because of the positive flow that is ensured by the pump. Whereas in a natural circulation, I will circulate about 6 times the amount of water, thereby keeping the bulk heat in the tube less than the oxidation. So, this is how the circulation boilers operate in the subcritical range. Whereas in a one-screw boiler, from 40% load to 100% load, it will be operating purely on one-screw mode. But below 40% load, in those boilers also I need to go for circulation. That means I need to protect the water wall there also in lower load regions. So, in these boilers also, there will be a circulation that will be required from the low load up to about 40% load. Thereby, you circulate some more amount of water that will ensure that tube temperature is safe. So, this is how the basic, the protection for the furnace comes. But otherwise, all these supercritical boilers, they are called as one-screw supercritical boilers. That means the flow enters once and leaves us steam from 40% load to 100% load. That is, water enters the economizer, where you add a sensible heat in the feed water, then it goes to the water walls, where the furnace adds the heat. So, the water directly flashes off into steam in the supercritical boiler, and the steam that is produced in the water walls goes directly to superheaters without getting circulated. This is the basic difference what we have been doing in a conventional drum boiler and a supercritical boiler. A one-screw supercritical boiler can operate both at supercritical pressure as well as subcritical pressure. That is, when you operate at 100% load, it will be operating at supercritical pressure. When you operate at 80% load, it will be operating at supercritical pressure. That is about 221 bar. But when you come down below 80%, the same boiler will act as a subcritical boiler, because the pressure comes below the 221 bar limit. So, in those boilers, we can employ these boilers are suitable both for subcritical and supercritical pressure. A one-screw boiler can be used for both subcritical and supercritical, whereas a drum boiler cannot be used for supercritical pressure. This is the basic difference. Now you see, in these boilers, in order to protect the water wall tubing, we go for what is called the spiraling in the furnace. Now in these boilers you can see the lower portion of the combustion chamber, unlike the subcritical boilers where we use a straight tube, we go for spiraling of the tube. This is to ensure that we provide adequate cooling when you operate from 40% load to 100% load. Below 40% load, we will go for circulation. Above 40% load, the tube has still to be protected. So, we go for very low diameter tubes like 38 mm tube compared to 51 mm tube or 63 mm tube in the circulation boilers. So, this lower diameter tube coupled with the spiraling will ensure that protection of the furnace is ensured. That's why if you see All supercritical boiler generally employ this spiral valve configuration to protect the tube. This is a basic arrangement. And in this spiraling, when the water is coming out at this point, you will be able to ensure uniform temperature. The number of tubes, if you take the cross section of the furnace, the width and depth, the number of tubes are so large, more than thousands of tubes. If each tube is having a different temperature, then it will produce differentials. When it produces differentials at these points, the stress that will be induced, each tube will be different. That means each tube will be pulling in different directions and the furnace will not be properly supported there will be tube ranges. So by spiraling, you are ensuring that the same tube is flowing all around and you will be able to get a uniform temperature. This is another basic principle underlying the supercritical technology. So because of this configuration, you can see the complexities, 3D paintings are coming in the burner portion and the exhaust portion where you have to introduce the burners in these through this water valve to create openings. So you see the complexities that are imposed in this supercritical boiler. You see for 2000 multi-plane tube beds using 41.3 mm tubes. So and then the tube, you can see as against the carbon steel, we are going for 2 1/4 chrome steel because of the high temperature, because furnace is also acting as a superheater, unlike in the subcritical boilers where temperature is below 400 degrees. So you can see the spiraling of the furnace manufactured in the shop. Now all these spiraling, you are manufacturing the form of panels. So when you fit up, you have to do a trial assembly in the boiler. Unlike in the subcritical boiler, where you need not have to do trial assembly. Here you have to ensure the angularity at the spiraling so that when it is erected in the site, it is carefully sitting, the tubes are matching each other. So these are all some of the complexities when you go for this type of configuration. Now when you take the spiraling in the boiler, when it is inclined, it is not self-supporting. Okay? If it is vertical, it is self-supporting. The tube can be supported from the top. So when it is spiraling, necessarily you have to transfer the load by means of this forking or a finger strap arrangement. These are all the depths. So the tube will be transferring the load to these depths, and these depths will be welded here to the vertical portion, and they in turn will take the load to the top. So these are all some of the complexities associated when you go for this type of clean cold technology boilers. So here, the same boiler, a supercritical boiler, is vertical valve. We have been able to give a vertical valve configuration where the unit rating is 750 megawatt. As I told you, the market is driven by two types of technologies. One is a vertical valve technology, another one is spiral valve technology. Now, the spiral valve technology, when the first supercritical plants were built, they were going for the spiraling because of the protection that has to be ensured for the furnace. Because of the complexities I showed, like 3-plane beds, then making openings for the bipars and the burners, this is resulting in a high amount of work, then increasing the cost of the boiler. All these complexities forced people to think, why not we try to adopt vertical valve technology also for this supercritical boilers. So people that way they thought, and then where they were able to introduce successfully the same type of vertical valve, but the tube diameter still goes to a very low value, 28 millimeter compared to 38 or 41. So that the cooling is ensured with smaller number of smaller diameter tubes and smaller number of tubes. So this technology, however, has got a limitation in the sense that it can be given only for sizes above 700 megawatt. Below 700 megawatt, any size is possible with spiral valve. Whereas the vertical valve technology, what is possible is beyond 700 megawatt only because of the mass flow consideration to cool the furnace. You can see here, to protect the tube from DNV tube diode, to go for rifling of the tubes or spiraling also is given. A grooves are there, like our conventional 5 megawatt boilers, where we use a rifled tubes in the combustion chamber with 28 millimeter. As I told you, you are able to go for very small diameter tubes. They are then cooling the tube. So So the spiraling versus vertical wall, when you use this for supercritical technologies, basically this type of configuration you can go for any type of capacity. Seamlessly it can be applied for any unit rating, whereas here it is applied only about 700 megawatt because of mass flow consideration. Now this has got more references and we are using smooth bore tubing. Here we are going for a rifled tubing inside the furnace so that we avoid the TNP point and the tube drive. And the spiraling increases the length of the tube, thereby the feed pump power is more in the case of the one-screw supercritical spiral wall fired furnace. Whereas here, because the tubes are shaped like our conventional vertical turbine boiler, the pressure drop will be less, thereby the feed pump power or the operating cost will be less. So here, as I told you, the materials that are there, you can see the high quantum of 18% chromium, 8% nickel steel, the furnace region. Whereas basically in conventional boilers we will be using a T22 material in most of the cases in the outlet of the furnace. Here you see the complete stainless steel in the entire portion. Here we are using 9% chromium steel, you can see T91. So here you see the low temperature heater, the T23 material, and only the economical what we are using is a carbon. So other than that, you can see that this technology is calling for large quantum of alloy steel and stainless steel. So the complexity of welding, heat treatment, stress relieving will impose additional requirements in manufacturing, the capability of the welder. These are some of the things when we go for the supercritical technology. Now, in order to go for, currently the efficiency levels as I told you is around 38 to 40%. And in order to go for still efficiencies of the order 45% cycle in the clean cold technology, we try to go for advanced ultra supercritical products. That is pressure of the order of 300 bar, temperature 700 degrees centigrade. So when we go for temperature 700 degrees centigrade, necessarily you have to go for 40 to 42% nickel based alloys as compared to 18% chromium, 8% nickel. You have to go for still advanced materials. Thereby the cost of the boiler definitely will go up when you go for this type of technology. So you have to make a economics of heat rate saving vis-a-vis the quantum of the advanced materials that you are going to do. Nevertheless, because of the need for protecting the environment, you have to try out all these technologies in a big stage. We cannot be liquid. So that's how this advanced ultra supercritical technology was thought of, and BHEL is working with IGCAR and also the NTPC utility to see that we put up a demonstration plant of 800 megawatt capacity as part of National Technology Mission. It is not BHEL, it is a part of National Technology Mission under Scientific Advisor Prime Minister's Office, where they have told us to introduce this in a big way so that we go for efficiencies of the order of 46 to 48%. This is how this program is thought of, and in that process BHEL set up a test rig at a cost of about 10 crores to see that materials and the heat flux profiles are tested, and we have a test rig in our plant estimated and put at a cost of 10 crores. So now this is about the clean coal technology, what we are doing in the established routes where the supercritical, ultra supercritical, where it is established in the grid. Ultra supercritical is temperatures of the order of 600 degrees centigrade. Advanced ultra supercritical is temperature of the order of 700 degrees centigrade, and pressure can be anywhere between 250 to 300 bar. Now for emission control, what we are doing in the clean coal technology area, you can see here. So basically we need to protect the environment from NOx, SOx, and also by means of particulate emission. So here we have a electrostatic distributed in the power plant. Then we have the burners, low NOx burners are installed here, and selective catalytic reduction for NOx reduction. So you can see the trend in the Indian power plant scenario, where we have been designing 450 milligram per normal metric cube particulate emission in the coal-fired plants. We have come as low as 40 milligram per ton. So this where now we are today, where plants are being given with the electrostatic dissipator of 10 feet ESP with 4 numbers or 6 numbers depending on capacity. So now the particulate emission of some of the boilers are listed here, where you can see that the as low as 30 milligram per mm cube we have come for a Vindhyachal power plant near the Varanasi. So now apart from this, we also give backfilter systems where the space constraint is there, or as a retrofit we can use backfilter to replace ESP, and we are also giving emission levels as low as 20 milligram per mm cube. So now to reduce the NOx levels, apart from the tangential fired boilers where it is inherently low in NOx, which produces about 260 grams per gigajoule, that is about 430 ppm or 750 milligram per mm cube. Now we also have a bypass overflow air system, so that the amount of air that is introduced in the furnace is retarded and then put above the furnace, so that we see that the thermal loss that is produced is less in the combustion cycle. So this has been put as a retrofit in one of the power stations, and this has yielded a result of about less than 40% reduction from the current NOx levels. So here we have the tangential firing, which is inherently producing low NOx. That is in the order of 750 milligram per mm cube or 430 ppm we are producing. So over and above that, we can reduce about 30 to 40% by going for bypass overflow air. So this is one of the retrofits that has been done in one of the 250 megawatt boilers. So this is the bypass overflow area where we can use this. So in addition to that, we also give the integral overflow area in the wind farms, a closed coupled overflow area, so that we are able to reduce NOx to further levels. So you can see here the separate overflow area given here in the four corners of the furnace. So this low NOx design strategy will help in seeing that we are able to produce NOx as low as 400 milligram per mm cube or 200 ppm. So the FGD in India, this has not picked up in a big way, because the Indian coals are inherently low in sulfur, about 0.5% sulfur only, and this 0.5% sulfur will translate into about 1500 to 2000 milligram per mm cube, that is the emission that is being produced. Now with the cluster of power plants that are coming up in many places, like in Chhattisgarh, Singrauli, Korba, Ramagundam, all these places, when the concentration of power plants are coming in a big way, now the legislation is going to come where we need to go for reducing the SOx levels. So the FGD is a must to see that if the plant has to produce a lower SOx. So towards that, we are also giving the flue gas desulfurization system, and some of the plants where we have installed is the Saint Cobain plant in India near Chennai. We are giving a emission level of 800 milligram per mm cube, and also Bombay we have installed a seawater plant 150 milligram per mm cube, and NTPC Bombaygarh, which is located in Assam, where the sulfur in the coal is more than 4 to 5%. So here we use a wetland process, and about 280 milligram per mm cube is the emission level. So this is the schematic of the plant, where it is located at the outlet of ESP. This is the FGD system that is being put, and this is the gas to gas heater, and this is where the chimney is located. Now the SOx capture can also be done in FPC and CFPC boilers. So and also this FPC technology, CFPC technology is also being given by BHEL. Currently the unit size ratings range from 125 megawatt to 250 megawatt in the case of CFPC segment. So here we can go for any type of fuel which has got very high fuel productivity, as you can see. So this inherently produces low NOx and SOx because the bed temperature difference is the order of 1000 degrees centigrade. So this shows the schematic of the circulating fluid spread combustion boiler, where the limestone and the fuel is injected, where you burn this in a suspended manner and the fluid is circulated. So the heating surfaces are located in the electrostatic filtration. So this is a 125 megawatt plant which we have given for Surat Lignite Power Project, which is in operation in Gujarat, and in Neyveli we have given a 250 megawatt CFPC boiler. One number boiler is commissioned and is under stabilization program to go for full load. So these are all the CFPC boilers which we have installed. These are references, and then about 19 are in operation. this is a boiler for export project Kodiampu near New Caledonia, near Australia, and the 133 megawatt CFBC boiler. So in BFBC boiler, we are given mineral steel and power limited 160 tons per hour capacity. So this shows the references for the public fluid split gas boiler, where maximum size we have done is about 180 tons per hour. So now these are all the technologies. Apart from this, now we come to the IGCC. So IGCC, you can see BHEL as early as 80s. We tried to put this plant of a demonstration with 6.2 megawatt plant using a moving bed gasifier, and that was not successful. So then we went for pressurized fluid bed gasification, because the fuel has to be cleaned before it is put into the turbine. The fuel gas, what you call as syngas, which you gasify by means of partially oxidizing the coal. So in a gasifier. Now when we adopted the moving bed gasifier technology in 80s, we produce tar and phenol. The tar and phenol, which comes out as a byproduct when you produce this gas, and when you clean up, it is not possible to clean up, because in a combined cycle plant you are using natural gas, which is a very high clean fuel. So when you use this IGCC technology for the combined cycle route, you need to have a ultra pure gas. That means you have to purify the gas from all these contaminants, so that the gas turbine performance is not impaired and gas turbine is protected. So we moved from this moving bed stoker to this pressurized fluid bed gasification, whereby we will be able to produce a clean gas, and the process was established. Initially, to start with, we had a pilot plant of 80 tons per day. Then now we have demonstrated the plant for 150 tons per day of coal, having a calorific value of about 1000 to 1200 kilocalorie per normal metric syngas. So the advantages of FBC is listed here. So the basic thing is no effluent formation and no tar formation. This is the best advantage. So the IGCC, we are going in a big way, because this also has got efficiencies of the order of 40 to 43%. So and we have done a lot of work in this area, and this technology definitely will pave the way for better and better clean coal technologies. You can see here we have tried to scale up from 18 tons per day to a higher value. So now we are going to go for the 182 megawatt demonstration plant, but it is not coming up in a big way. Even though we have done the conceptual design, people are having fund constraint, how to fund this project, because the cost of the plant is coming very huge, and also the viability they want us to establish. Even though a 100% standby using a natural gas route was also given, because of the fund constraint, we are not able to put up this 182 megawatt plant in Vijayawada. So we have reached a very high level of understanding, but we see that once this takes off, probably this technology will pave the way for introduction and then phasing out all our PC plants. So this technology will be the future technology when we go for establishing this in a big way. So this will consume less water compared to PC plants. So that way also this is environment friendly, so that you are not giving lot of effluents and discharge from the power plant. So and then we also try to put up in a small way oxygen combustion. We are working with a step in this area, thereby seeing that the boiler size can be reduced instead of going for the gas for combustion, go for pure oxygen through oxygen firing, so that the boiler size comes down. And then the small way we put up a pilot plant using the amines, so that we are able to capture the CO2. So this also is being tried out, and then see that the CO2 is captured in the process. So this is what I thought I would share with you, what BHEL is doing in the clean coal technology area, and I will be happy to receive any questions from you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Suram Kumar from APGN Group. I I need a clarification on this SPM level. In recent tower boilers, we are facing a problem of this SPM level, and we have introduced this ammonia dosing also, but still it is a problem. Is there any development for this existing plant?
The current solid particulate how much we are getting?
We are getting around 150.
150 milligram.
Even after using some ammonia.
Ammonia injection.
Yes.
See, basically the temperature level in the boiler outlet may be higher than 120 degrees centigrade. You are having about flue gas temperature levels are what now? It will be 150, 170 degrees centigrade.
It's around 150 at air-based outlet.
So naturally the basic thing will be that higher gas temperature means higher volume of flue gas will be treated in the electrostatic precipitator. And the size of EP, it will not be sufficient enough to treat that much amount of flue gas. So if you are trying out ammonia injection, that is also a route by which the emission can be reduced, but it can give only some benefit of 5 to 10%. It cannot do more than that. So you have to necessarily make the EP still larger. Today if you see the weight of ESP what we are giving in a 500 megawatt plant is equal to your 210 megawatt power plant weight. The 10,000 tons of steel we are giving in a 500 megawatt plant as ESP itself. That's why we are getting 20 milligram per gram. The plants what we put in Vijayawada in say 87 to 90. So at that time the size of ESPs what have been given may be not adequate enough to capture the amount of pollutants that you are importing. Naturally, you have to go for retrofit to see that if you want to reduce below 100 milligram per gram, you have to enlarge EPC. There is no other thing. When you go for R&M, actually you have to think in these lines, because definitely pollution control authorities will not be leaving out.
Is there any possibility of reducing the exit gas temperature and controlling it?
Exit gas temperature you can reduce by way of one is economic addition. This is one way that you can keep the aerated inlet gas temperature low so that aerated outlet gas temperature also goes down. Second is that the mill outlet temperature, operational variable. If you are able to keep it somewhere beyond 85 to 95 degrees centigrade, you can reduce the gas outlet temperature at aerated outlet. That way also you can improve the efficiency to some extent.
I am from Navy. The FPC technology is meant for mainly the high ash coal, whereas in Navy the ash percentage is only 3 to 12. Then what made us to go for this FPC technology in Navy? It's in Buzzing plant is okay because it's high ash. In Navy it's not so.
Navy, when we put up the 4 into 210 megawatt plant, and when the 3 into 210 megawatt transfer plants went into operation, there is a specific problem which was encountered, there is a FPS that was present in the margasite plant. And the margasite has a tendency to lower the initial deformation temperature of the ash. So when the fuel was given to us for design, it was about 1070 degree initial deformation temperature. But when the boiler went into operation, when we assessed, it was assessed in the Stuttgart University, it was about 850 to 900 degrees centigrade. So no amount of boiler design, that is your furnace with whatever amount you increase, you cannot lower to 850 900 degrees centigrade at the outlet of the superheater plate and surface. When the flue gases are leaving the first superheater widely stressed surface, it must go well below 50 degrees below initial deformation temperature of ash. That is 1050 degree centigrade is the IDT. The gas temperature leaving the widely spaced plate and superheater located outside of the furnace, it should go at around 1000 degrees centigrade. But on the contrary, we saw in the furnace itself there were large amount of slag taking place, and then it is getting deposited. It was not getting removed even though water blowers were provided to remove the deposits. It has to be operated in a continuous manner and the deposit should not be allowed to build up. But unfortunately, the deposit build-up was much more than the soot blower that can try to carry, even though we have provided more than some 36 number of blowers, it was not sufficient. So finally we thought that this technology of PC firing will not help. You have to go for a low combustion temperature technology. That's how this CFBC technology was thought. Because inherently the bed temperatures are low, so we will be able to address this point. That's how this CFBC technology was thought of. That's the reason.
But the percentage of mark-size between runoff mine coal is less than 1%. For sake of this 1%.
No, it was reported as 2% when it was measured. 1% or 2%. It is not the quantity that matters. It is the quality that is lowering the temperature. The quality is mattering, not the quantity of ash. Even though Neyveli ash is 3 to 10% there, the size of it is also large. So that's the reason. The quality of ash matters a lot rather than the quantity of ash. The slagging and boiling property, the quantity of ash is mainly dictated by EP sizing, whereby you can remove the particulates, the quantum of ash. Whereas the quality matters with respect to slagging and boiling in the furnace. That I cannot do anything. So naturally I can dimension to a normal dimension. I cannot do over dimension also because it will not give space or land for me to locate the boiler. It should not become unwieldy also. So that's it. So that's why assessment of the fuel properties in the beginning is very important. And when a manufacturer put up a power plant, the fuel properties will not be known. Because of the own problems, because nobody will give a mine sample, they may give borehole samples. And borehole samples may be different from the mine sample also. That's how it came. Neyveli, we were given borehole samples, but we ended up this problem. But ultimately, I think 7 into 2 ton, they are operating by and large okay. I think there should not be any issue. But this CFBC, as you rightly said, it's a nascent technology as far as India is concerned. In fact, we came a long way after establishing 125 members. We got a lot of firing from Suez Lignite also. I don't want to argue. We did a good job. Now the plants are working reasonably well. Buses are also, I think, working. So here, the choice of technologies is very, very important. You are right that why we went for CFBC, yes, this fuel posed a problem. But afterwards, I think market did not turn up in a big way. That's how I think 2 into 2 ton also is operating well, separate way as well. So there is no issue. But this has made us think. Plus, at that time, the cost of PFI boilers were very, very high. When we import the technology, particularly the filter mills, the afterburning grade. So this also had made us to go for full indigenous technology whereby we should be able to access. That was also another reason commercially they have to.
Thank you.
I am Kannan from GDK Power. In one of the slides it is mentioned that boilers are designed for washed coal and imported coal. I want to know whether there is any boiler working with imported coal, 100% imported coal in India.
100% imported coal we have designed and supplied for Trombay Unit 8, 250 megawatt firing Indonesian high moisture coal. It is working. See, the boilers designed for Indian coal has the capability to fire imported coal. When you fire imported coal, you have to see from which mine it is. If it is from Indonesia, you have got array of mines, starting from low moisture to moisture RCS, tending towards decline, 37 to 40%. So you have to see what is the level of inherent moisture present in the fuel. Even though it is subsea and decline, you have to see whether you can employ both wells using the technology. That is one thing. Second, in imported coal generally ash level is low, but you have to see the quality of ash, not the quantity of ash. The quantity of ash, definitely if we size our Indian condition will produce the emission as low as 10 mg per mm. But the quality of ash, you have to see whether it produces slagging and boiling. So that is second thing. Third thing is that the mills will be underloaded because the calorific value of the fuels imported will be around 5,000 kilocalorie per kg as compared to 3,000 kilocalorie per kg what you have decided. The mills will be underloaded, so you have to see that because instead of grinding, mills will produce lot of noise as we are producing less quantity of coal fired means the amount of coal that is fired put into the mill is less means it will produce lot of metallic sounds. So these things you have to see. Plus the imported coal generally has got very high volatile matter, about 30 to 35%. So So you have to see that you are adjusting the air dampers to see that flame is properly put out of the burner, otherwise flame will be burning inside the mouth of the burner. So you have to adjust the secondary air velocity, this operational adjustment you have to see, plus mill outlet temperature. If you keep 85, 90 like the range you keep for Indian course, where volatile matter is at the order of 20 to 24%, you will end up burning the PF pipes, mill fire, etc. and also bunker fire. So these things you have to see. And you handle high moisture coal, you have to see the flowability in the bunker and the filter. It should not get choked. So these are all the things when you switch the fuel. But basically, generally, Indian coal-fired boilers, where it is designed for Indian coals, they were capable of handling any range of imported coals. It has been demonstrated in Mettur, Tuticorin, Dahanu, all these places. People have fired individually, or people have blended and fired. Both are there. But when you blend the coal, the eutectic compound that is formed, particularly the ash constituents, they can lower the melting point, and that can produce problems. So all these things do not have a specific answer. If you are telling something and doing something, you have to watch the performance and do it. But generally I can say that successfully it has been done. That's all. Because today the country is facing coal shortage. Naturally, we are still a power-starved country. If you take Tamil Nadu, we have 4,000 megawatt shortage in power. So I cannot say that you don't fire. You have to fire and get the output, otherwise you will not get it. So these things, you have to weigh proper perspective and then take decisions accordingly. So no ready-made answer will be given by either a executive or a designer or a consultant. You have to see that how best in the given circumstances, what decision we can take.
Thank you.